I had Premier Danielle Smith on my radio show last week, and I asked her the differences of working as a premier with the Trudeau Liberals versus the Mark Carney Liberals. And she said pragmatism was the biggest change, that she felt that there was a more pragmatic approach to government. It was far less ideological, at least in these early days. What's your assessment?
I agree. You're dealing with a business person that's learning government, but we're there to support him about government. And he understands where he has to go. We just have to move quicker and faster on everything across the board. Great personality, takes your calls, takes your messages, returns them right away. He's good. I don't care. I'm a staunch fiscal conservative, staunch, but I don't give two hoots about political stripes. I just don't. And don't get me wrong, I'm so proud to be the leader of the PC party, but I'll work with anyone. I think I've shown it. It doesn't matter if it's an NDP mayor or Liberal leader, and that's the same right across our country. We have NDP premiers, which I get along very well with, Liberal premiers and Conservative premiers, and we all work well together.
You have demonstrated an ability to work with anybody and, in fact, build friendships and relationships to the benefit of the people of Ontario. Who has surprised you from a personality perspective? Let's put policy aside. You're the dean of the premiers around the premiers table. Yeah. Which premier has surprised you in terms of how well you get along with them?
Well, my two, I get along very well with Houston and Premier Scott Moe. Scott was the first person I met. We're like-minded. So is Tim Houston. They're great. But I love Wob Canoe, too. I always tell Wob, you're politically misguided. He sounds like a conservative when he speaks. But, he's an absolute champion. We went through, Scott and I sat at the table the other day, and we wondered how many premiers we went through since we're elected. We're kind of the senior statespeople, and we counted 22 premiers we went through. So, but we have a good team, really good team that we work with right now.
Well, actually, I'm glad that you mentioned Manitoba and Saskatchewan, because I want to return to tariffs, but not American tariffs, but the Chinese tariffs. That on this one file, it does seem like a crack is appearing in the Team Canada approach. Both Manitoba and Saskatchewan have requested that the federal government remove the 100% tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles in the hopes of restoring normalcy to our relationship with China, as well as to the canola industry. You've gone on record against this tactic. Tell us why.
Well, first of all, I had a conversation the other day. Scott called me up and said, "Hey, I got to protect my property." I get it. I get why Wob Canoe and Scott are saying, drop the tariffs, but I have to do the same thing, and I respect their sector. They ship about $4.9 billion to China on canola. Well, look at our auto sector. It's 157,000 workers, direct jobs, indirect. Multiply that by 4 times. We've seen over $46 billion of new investments. So I respect what they're doing, but there's no damn way we should drop tariffs on China. I'll tell you that. Absolutely not.
I think one of the reasons, Mr. Premier, that you resonate with the people at home, can't speak for the people in this room, but for the people at home, is your willingness to demonstrate and show people how emotional this tariff war with the Americans has made you, because I think a lot of people at home connect with you on that front. They feel that as well. And last week, I really did I saw that a prime example of it as it related to the comments made by Howard Lutnick and the impact of, if his dream comes to pass, what that means for the people of Oshawa, for the people of the auto industry in this province. I mean, it feels to me like this is a crisis for the automotive sector in Ontario, the likes of which we have never seen before. How are you approaching that?
Well, first of all, I want to give a shout out to Flavio Volpe, which is in the room. The guy's an absolute champion. He's been leading the charge, and he's doing a great job. But I think absolutely, it's become very personal. Not just myself, but every single Canadian. Every Canadian knows a friend, a neighbor, a relative that lives in the U.S. or a business partner. And Howard Lutnick, smart business person, he has to learn politics as well. But he has to get on the page with the president. The president's saying one thing, that he wants both auto sectors to thrive, and Howard Lutnick saying we're going to build autos. Well, I'll tell you, it's going to kill the auto manufacturers down there. All of them have come out and said they've already lost $1 billion because of free trade. It's so intertwined. The auto pact's been around since the 1960s. And as you've heard many times, auto parts will go back and forth 6, 7, 8 times. And I always say, you can't unscramble an egg that's been around since 1960. You have to make the omelet larger. And I've also said to inform our American friends that we buy 400% more vehicles than anyone in the entire world. And the vehicles that we buy off them, we produce roughly, and it varies, but 1.7 million autos a year. And 50% of them have American parts. So it's going to devastate the auto sector in the U.S. But we're gonna survive. We're going to become more creative and come up with new ideas. And that's what we're going to do. But the auto sector has been here for 100 years, and it will always be here for the next 100 years.
As somebody who reports on the rise of violent crime on my radio show far too often for my liking, the issues of criminal justice reform are top of mind for me, as I'm sure they are for so many people in this room. What are you hearing from Ottawa in terms of what their plans are for criminal justice reform? Because just last week, the Tories put forth a bill, C-242, a Bail Not Jail Act, which got voted down, but that was followed quickly by the Liberals vowing that the Conservatives would be very happy with what's coming down the pike, with a far more comprehensive second look at criminal justice reform. What have you asked for from Ottawa, and what have they told you about what's coming down the pike?
Well, first, but our message to them, very simple, is don't have a watered-down bail system. People are done. Folks, we're out in the field every day. We're doing polls. I've never seen crime go from eighth out of 10 up to number 1 beside economy and healthcare. People are done with this crime. Everyone in this room knows someone that got their car stolen or a home invasion. We experienced it down the street just in my little neighborhood. 4 home invasions. They kicked the door in. They put guns to people's heads, terrorize them for their keys. And then they steal their keys. And guess what happens when they get caught? They go in front of the judge, and the judge says, oh, little Johnny didn't mean to do this. We're going to let him out on bail. He doesn't let him out on bail once. This is a 4th, 5th, 6th time. There has to be consequences when you do violent crimes. The poor family in Kleinberg, just imagine trying to protect your 4-year-old daughter when these punks have a gun to her head, and he gets shot in front of his 3 kids and his wife. They won't be able to live in the home. That's going to impact the kids their whole lives. And there has to be accountability. And that's what we need. We need tough bail reform. Not only that, we need mandatory sentences. So when a criminal goes in with a gun, you're doing X amount of years, whatever it is, 10 years. But their argument, the Liberals are saying, well, Harper tried that. No, Harper did a broad brush across everything. Let's start focusing on areas. And to be very frank, the judiciary system should not be interfering in policies. It's not their house that is getting broken into. Again, we have to make sure that we set mandatory sentences. You go in with a gun, you're getting 10 years. The last part, what's happening, because I get updates on a daily basis from frontline police officers and the chiefs around the province and the commissioner. So now the older, crooks are giving guns to 16, 17, and 18-year-olds to go in there saying nothing will happen to you. And it's a shame? Nothing does happen to them. So they kick in the door with a gun. We have to change the Young Offenders Act. And there's too many judges that are just bleeding hearts that, we got to give them a second chance. No, these are troublemakers. These kids need to be sentenced, and they need to learn before they go in. There are consequences when you go in with a gun on a violent crime. Can I tell a little story too?
Please.
Good story.
Please.
So a couple months ago, I pull in, I escape from my detail at 8 o'clock in the morning before they come, and it ticks them off. So I hop in my pickup and I want to go to Home Depot. It was on a Saturday. And I pull up and I wanted to get some plants. Actually, it was the weekend before the Prime Minister came. I wanted to get plants for the cottage, so I loaded up and I pulled up right by the nursery. I think majority have been to Home Depot, so I pull right up. I load up all the plants, and I'm ready to pull out. And here's this guy with a backpack and a bag. And he's walking out, and the store manager's yelling at him, come back, come back. And the security guard's there. And I said, well, go get him. We aren't allowed to go get him. And so he went around the side of where all the plants and outside the parking lot. So I was in my car. I said, screw this. I'm going after this guy. So by this time, my heart's beating. I'm ticked off. So I go racing behind. No one can see. And I pull up behind him and jump out of the car. I said, buddy, what's in your bag? Nothing's in my bag. I said, buddy, I'm going to kick your ass all over the parking lot. Show me what's in your bag. And I did. I couldn't help myself. And so I said, buddy, come over here. And nothing's in my bag. And so we start. Now, by this time, the store manager comes, and he's on fire. He's cursing and swearing. I guess I threw in a couple colorful language, too. And so he's emptying out his bag. And all of a sudden, so he's saying, nothing's here. I said, how about your other bag? It's because he dropped it and heard a cling. And so he went in there and he pulled out one of those saw blades that you open up.
Yeah.
And you use it as a saw blade. And the store manager said, that's what he stole. And then, we start saying da-da-da-da to the guy. And then I said, keep emptying out the bag. He pulls out some cutters, 10 steps. And by this time, I'm in a pretty rage. I'm just in a full out rage on this guy. And I said, buddy, you stole those too. And he goes, I swear to God, I didn't steal them. He said, look at the rust on them. I looked at them. They were rusty. I said, okay, those are yours. But the rest? And then I went on to tell him if I ever see him in the parking lot, he's going to get a beating like he's never got before. But that's what you have to do. So.
Well, that's where we are now.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately that's where we are. Unfortunately, Mr. Premier, we are out of time. But despite what people might hear on my radio show, my hope is that we are living at such an important time, such a high stakes time for Canada and indeed Ontario, that my hope for our government in Ottawa is that they succeed, because if they succeed, everyone succeeds. And I believe the same thing about a progressive conservative government here in Ontario. If you succeed, then all of Ontario succeeds. And so with that in mind, I feel, speak for everybody in this audience, where we wish you the very best in this fall session. And as a matter of fact, for everybody on both sides of the aisle, a successful fall session. We wish you the very, very best. And thank you very much for your time today.
I'm very, very grateful. Thank you, everyone. And go Jays, go. We got to come back.
Thanks so much for watching the show. Now, if you enjoyed what you saw, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of The Ben Mulroney Show.